Hi everyone, it's Lindy on from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to make a fun birthday spinner card and we're going to be using some new images from Art Impressions. So let's get started by creating the spinner mechanism for our card. I've got this largest scallop die. This is from the Fawn Outside In Stitch Scallop Circle Stackable dies. And you can see that's going to give it a really pretty stitched edge around it as well. So it just add a little bit more interest to our spinner. So now what I want to do is find the center point on this scallop circle. And for the scallop circle, it's really easy to find it. Just go from that little notch at the top to the one on the bottom. And I'm just going to make a little pencil mark there. And then I'll turn it. And you can also go from the center of the scallop to the center of that other scallop. So either way will work just fine. And once you have the center, we're going to grab this brand new mini journal birthday set from Art Impressions. This is part of the new watercolor series. And these are some small images that are going to work perfectly for our spinner. So what I'm going to do is line that up so that little V is facing me. So each of those little V's, I'm going to stamp with that facing me, and I'm placing the stamp upright in that position. So I've got my VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I'll go ahead and stamp that. So I'm going to be using quite a few of the images from that new set. And then I'm just going to rotate that. Again, I'm going to be stamping in that little V section. And then I'll go ahead and ink that up. And we'll do this all the way around. So when this little spinner spins around, we're going to see all these different little birthday items. So let's do the little party hat. And the last one we'll do is the little balloon. Now you could certainly do a couple of balloons here if you prefer, but I thought I'd just keep it to the one. And then later we'll be adding a little bit of string to that. But for right now, we're all set with that. Let's grab some masking magic. This is from Gina K. And this is just some masking paper. It's got that backing on it. And what I'm going to do is lay all those same stamps out and stamp them onto the masking paper. And then what we're going to be doing is masking off each of those images. I'm going to use my detail scissors to cut these out. Now you do want to cut on that line or a little bit on the inside of that line, just so that when we apply the ink to the background, we won't have a gap between the image and that background color. So again, you're just cutting in on that line a little bit. So I'm removing the backing from each of these little items, and I'm going to just lay it right over top of the image that we already stamped. So I've got my Tim Holtz pick tool. I've got that center point. While I have this out, I'm just going to go ahead and use my little mat and put that hole right in the center. And again, that will be for the little spinning mechanism. So I've got some Tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to just blend that all around. Now I did realize at this point I should have removed that pencil line before I started applying that background color. So you'll want to do that before you start blending on that background color. So again, I'm just using my eraser, and I'm going to try to get rid of as much of that pencil mark as I can. So now I can go right ahead and blend out this tumbled glass all over. And I'm going over those masked images. And you want to make sure you get plenty of ink right up to the edges. I like to kind of push down on the mask and then apply the ink around it, just so I don't lift that mask by accident. Once I have that completely covered, I'm going to go to the broken china. I'm placing a little bit of that onto my glass medium mat, and I'll add some water using my distress sprayer, and I'll just spatter this panel. I'm using a small paintbrush. That's the number 0 paintbrush, just so I get some little tiny spatters. Now once that's all set, I can go ahead and remove those masks. I like to place them back onto the backing from the masking paper, and then I can save those for another project. So I'll just set those masks aside with my stamps, so if I ever need them again, I don't have to spend the time cutting them out. Now I'm adding some of the Distress Oxide Peacock feathers all around the edges. That'll just highlight that little scallop a bit better. So when you're looking at the mechanism, that'll be highlighted a little bit more. So you can see that up close. Now let's do some coloring for these images. I'm starting off with the wine red, and I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens, and I'm using the blender pen to do my blending. This is some really simple coloring that I'm doing on these, and I've got Sugared Almond Pink next for the frosting, and the colors will be listed in that upper left hand corner as we're going along. Here's the light violet, and I'm basically adding color to each side of the cupcake, and then I'm just pulling it in towards the center. And then we'll do the little cake part using the beige. Now you could certainly use your colored pencils here or your Copic markers, whatever you prefer. We're going to come in with a little bit of glitter after we're done with these, so we'll add a little bit of sparkle to these. Now I've got the pink flamingo. Now for the colors that I've selected, a bit later on I'll show you, we're going to grab a plaid pattern paper, and it's going to have a kind of a pastel rainbowy collection on it. So I'm trying to kind of keep that in mind as I'm doing my colors. So I'm keeping it fairly pastel and just kind of mixing those rainbow of colors in more of a pastel tone. And you'll see what I mean once I show you that paper pack. So this birthday set is part of the watercolor journal series, and there is a mini journal series now. It's this little tiny journal. It's very similar to the other journal that Art Impressions came out with last year, but this one is teeny tiny. It is just the sweetest thing, and there are lots of little images that are going to coordinate with that mini journal. So that's the mini journal bundle, and if you purchase the entire bundle, you get a discounted price. So that is currently available. You might want to check that out. And there's also a gnome journal set as well. And with the gnome, you get a little set of gnomes. There's some berries. There's some mini flowers and some mini mushrooms. So they're really cute. And there's also a paper pack as well. And that's also a journal set. So again, I will list some of these items down below for you if you want to take a look at those. And now once I've done the coloring for all of these pieces, I'll give you a closer look at that. And then I thought we should add that little bit of sparkle that I mentioned before. So I'm going to grab that Wink of Stella glitter pen and go over some of these items. Now do keep in mind that we colored with a water-based marker, so you do want to make sure that you clean off that pen in between colors. And it can move your ink around a little bit, so you do want to just kind of dab it on. You don't want to undo all that blending that you've already done. Now I do want to let that sit and dry. Now let's take a look at the paper pack we're going to be using. This is the Easter paper pack, and we're going to be using this really pretty pastel plaid, and that's the one I mentioned earlier. So that's kind of what inspired the colors that I chose for today. So I've got a card, a standard A2 size card, and then I've got that panel, which it was cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. We're making a standard card. We'll grab the nested circle die set, and again this is designed a little bit smaller to fit on your journal series. I've got that 5th smallest die, and I just want to make sure I have a little bit of room around each of these images, so that looks like it's the perfect size. I want to place it below the scalloped edge of my large circle. So I'm bringing it down a little bit, maybe about a 1/2 inch. And then I'm just taping that die in place. I want to slide this scallop circle out from underneath it, and then we're going to cut that hole from the pattern paper. So I'm just running it through the die cutting machine. Now at this point, you'll see there's a little notch cut out off to the right hand side as well. So I went ahead and did that, and I'm using that 6th smallest die for that. And I want to cut the circle in the middle and that little notch circle off to the right out of some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. So I've cut another panel the exact same size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I've lined up those two dies. They just kind of lock into place, and then I'll run that through the die cutting machine, and we'll have these two panels cut down to size. You can see that there. But now I do want that little notch to show through on the inside of the card. So I've got my standard A2 size card. I'm opening it up, and I'm going to line up that little die again right along that notch that we've already cut, and I'm going to run that through. So now we have that little notch cut from all 3 of these panels. And then we've just got the circle cut from the first 2 panels, from the plaid paper and that layer beneath it. Now what I'm doing is adding some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I'm going to glue these two together. If your paper that you're using for the top layer is a really heavyweight cardstock, you don't need to back it the way I'm doing it here. But my paper is kind of on the lightweight side, so I want to make sure I have a nice solid panel for the front of my card. So therefore, that's why I'm adding that layer. And here I'm just going to use my eraser, adhesive eraser, just to take away any stickiness from that Post-it tape. And I'll also use the Pink and Main Anti-Static Powder Tool, again, just to remove any leftover stickiness. So now you can see how that card is going to line up. Let's go ahead and work on the spinner mechanism. So that circle that cut out of the white panel earlier, let's go ahead and use that for our mechanism. I also die cut a second one out of some copier paper. I'm folding it into 4 sections, and that way I can easily find the center of the circle. I'm going to punch a hole there, and then I'll line these 2 up and punch that same hole in the center of that heavier weight cardstock. Now I've got a mini brad. I'm going to push it through that circle, and then I'm going to slide it through the back of my spinner mechanism, that larger scallop circle. And now I can just open up the brad. Now for that smaller circle, we need to add some adhesive foam. I'm going to use my scrapbook.com adhesive foam squares, and I'm going to place quite a few on the back. And then I'll go ahead and remove the backing, but first let's just make sure that we have this lined up. So this is how our card is going to go together. This little mechanism will be in the middle, and I'm lining up those images. I just want to make sure that I have this lined up perfectly. Once I do, I can remove the backing from that foam tape, and then holding this with my hand to make sure it doesn't move, I'm going to line that up with the front of my card. And I'm just going to press that down. That will press that scallop circle into place exactly where we need it. Now let's pop up the front panel. I've got some Scotch foam mounting tape, and I'm going to place it around the edges. I don't want to put any near that mechanism itself because I don't want to interfere with that spinning. Here's where I'm just going to add a little string to my balloon, a couple little tails there, and I'm using a Faber-Castell Pit Artist pen in black to do that. So I'm just checking to make sure everything's working fine. I've removed the backing from all of that foam tape, and now we can just tape this in place. And just checking again to make sure that it's spinning properly and it looks really cute. I'm very happy with that. So let's go back to the peacock feathers. I've got a piece of scrap paper. This is a 100-pound paper. Just going to ink that up, and then we're going to die cut a little arrow for our card. Now I've got the Lawn Fawn Open Me stamp and dies and the Lawn Fawn Push Here stamps. So both of these sets give you little arrows. They give you a stamp with an arrow on it or a die with an arrow. I'm just going to use the die, and I'm going to just die cut it from that peacock feathers. And there are two pieces to this little arrow. So let's just put that little end piece on. I'm just going to poke that out, and then we can glue these two together. That'll just give it a little bit more dimension. Again, I'm going back to the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, and I've got my little pickup tool. We'll just grab that and glue that down. Now we can go ahead and glue it to the card, and then the recipient will know that they need to spin this around. And it's just kind of a fun little addition to your card as well. Now this is a brand new journal die set, and these are some additional pieces that you can use in your larger journals. This is brand new. I don't have the correct title for this yet, but I will make sure I have it when I release the video, and it will be listed and linked down below for you. But look at these beautiful frames you get, that label die, some additional page dies. I just think this is gorgeous. I'm going to grab that little banner die, and I'm just using my little steel die cutters from Art Impressions to separate those dies. So let's go back to the peacock feathers. I've got some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm just going to ink this up, and I'm going to add the broken china, and I'm just going to spatter a little bit of that on the panel. Once that's dry, we can go ahead and die cut this banner, and I'm running it through the Sizzix Sidekick die cutting machine. Let's go ahead and grab a sentiment for that banner. This is the Little Things sentiment set. Again, another brand new set. You can see all these cute little sentiments you have. Let's start off with that one that says, "Make a Little Wish." I'm going to just temporarily tape down that banner onto my MISTI so that it doesn't move around when I do my stamping. Again, I'm going back to the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now, at this point, I decided I wanted to frame that circle a little bit better. So I'm just grabbing a couple of circle dies, that same size as the original circle opening, and then one a few sizes larger to create a nice little frame. So let's go ahead and die cut these out of some white Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm just going to line that smaller one up inside that larger one, and then we'll go ahead and run that through the die cutting machine, and that's going to give us a nice white frame. I've just felt like it just needed a little something there, and I like that a lot better. So sometimes as you're going along, you can kind of make adjustments. I really wasn't planning on doing that, but in the end, I really felt that it needed something there. So let's go ahead and glue that in place. And now I've got a little place to put that banner die, or that banner sentiment. So we'll go ahead and glue that right above this. Now I did want to give that a little bit of dimension, so I'm going to use some foam squares and pop that up. So these are from scrapbook.com, and these are little small foam squares. So I'm just going to put plenty of those on there, just to make sure I pop this up nicely. Let's go ahead and remove the backing, and you can see that I didn't put any foam squares at the bottom of that banner because that's going to overhang just a little tiny bit into our opening. I've got some little heart droplets from Dress My Craft, and these are the Snow White hearts, and these are just so pretty. I'm going to put two smaller ones on either side of that banner. Later on we'll be adding a larger one, but for now I'm just going to set those in place. Let's set that aside while we create a little panel for the front of our card. These are the rectangle A2 double stitch dies. I've got a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by about 1.5 inches, 1 1/4 inches. I'm going to create that stitch line on the top and on the bottom of this panel. So I've just grabbed that third largest die and I'm just going to tuck it in between those stitch lines, and that will give me that stitch border at the very top of this panel. You can see that there, and then I'm going to flip it around and do that again and get that stitch line on the opposite side. So let's go ahead and run that through the die cutting machine. It's a really easy way to get that stitched edge on both sides of your card panel. So let's quickly ink up this card panel just the same way that we inked up that little spinner mechanism, starting off with the tumbled glass. I'm going to add a little bit of the peacock feathers. We're just going to spatter that panel really quickly. Once that's spattered, I'm going to set that aside to dry. Now let's go back with the peacock feathers and just go right along that edge. And we'll just define that border a little bit better. I'm going to do both sides. And for the next sentiment, which will just say happy birthday, I'm going to the birthday sentiment set. We're going to grab that happy birthday right there. We're going to stamp it off towards the right hand side of this panel because I'm going to add the little birthday cake off to the left, and we're going to be popping that up for a little bit of dimension. So again, I'm going back to the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Let's just quickly stamp that. We can attach this to the front of the card. I'm going to place it down below where that little mechanism is. And now I've got that little cake. Let's go ahead and quickly stamp that. And then I will color that in off camera. Again, just going back to those same colors we used before. The only difference is I will be adding a little bit of the light gray and gray to do the platter. Otherwise, all those colors I'm repeating from earlier. So you can see that all colored in. Going back to my little foam squares, and we'll pop this up. Now I'm going back to those little Dress My Craft hearts. That has 2 different sizes of hearts in it. So I'm going to grab a larger one and place it right below the happy birthday. I'm just centering it there. And that just adds a nice little bit of embellishment, a little bit of dimension. And then I've got this other sentiment, and again that's from that birthday sentiment set for the inside of the card, and that says birthday wishes coming your way. So here's a closer look at the card, and look at this little spinner. It is just so sweet. And again, these mini journal stamps are perfect for this type of card. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.